Awesome. So I'm going to kick us off by introducing Elias. Then we're going to go through a couple of topics that I thought would be good for us to discuss. And then after that, we'll open it up to just Q&A for everyone to ask whatever questions they want. So just to kick us off, let's introduce Elias Torres. He's the founder and CTO of Drift. We had the opportunity to learn about his company last week in our TEM course. He's working at Drift, which is one of the world's leading conversational marketing and sales platforms. Prior to that, he was a VP of engineering at HubSpot, which we also learned about last year in marketing. And before that, he was at Performable, which got acquired by HubSpot. And before that, he served as a VP of engineering at Lookery and spent the first 10 years of his career as an engineer at IBM. In addition to starting, advising, and helping early stage companies, Elias is passionate about building winning teams. He's also a community activist focused on supporting Latinx entrepreneurs across the US and has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Entrepreneur, and TechCrunch. Am I missing anything, Elias?
I'm sure you're missing a lot of stuff, but they probably don't matter. Or I don't know. Let's keep going. I love it.
Cool. So with that, let's just kick off with the first of our topics that we have. So the first thing we want to learn a little bit about is your career path and your guiding principles throughout your career. So first question there is, how did you think about deciding what companies to work for earlier in your career? And in particular, how did launching your career at IBM influence your journey at Entrepreneur? What were the strengths?
One second. Terrence, what's not being done here? Sorry. He's right. He recorded it. Okay, good.
Yeah,
right.
I got you.
I just because it's important because we'll share this call for other people too. I'll put this on YouTube, and we use Drift video as well to send it around. Right. This is important. So thanks again. What are the guiding principles that I made in my career? Look, when anybody's being interviewed and stuff like that, they're all like just speaking in hindsight, right? It's like who knows what, when you're your age, what guiding principles do we know? That's just nonsense. So I like to try to be real and not claim that I knew what I was doing. But I'll tell you some things that I kind of was not naturally drawn to, right? One of them is that I took risk, right? I wasn't my naivete being an immigrant and not knowing what was available, right, to ask and to offer, didn't equip me to be so confused trying to make a decision, right? I wasn't conflicted. Like I did not know McKinsey existed. I did not know Harvard existed. I did not know MIT existed when I arrived this country in 1993. You know what I mean? And so it's like, so I didn't have this pressure. Like I remember my peers at high school in Tampa, they were like, "Oh, we're going up north to Dartmouth or Princeton," and I was like, "I'm going to USF. I need to live with my mother because we need to help pay for the house together, the condo that we bought, and I need a degree." I just knew I needed a degree, right? And so I never had this extra information. So maybe the guiding principle is that don't overcomplicate decisions, right? Because nothing is final, and it's about learning, right? I've learned. I'm a learner. I learn fast on all the opportunities that I have had. Second, I was the risk taker, right? It's like I left IBM after 10 years in search of this startup world, right? I'll give you an example. One of my friends, he was an engineer with me and I was his manager, and he graduated from Stanford engineering CS. And then in 2002 or 3, he tells me, I'm going to go work for this company called Google. And I didn't know anything. I worked for IBM, so I thought I was like, I'm working in the best company in the world, and these guys, I want to work for Google. And I didn't know anything about the Valley. I didn't know about startups. I had not read a book. I didn't know any information. And he goes, takes a job there, and go works for that company. And so when people were jumping into startups, right, they're like so obsessed for finding the the rocket ship, right? The trillion-dollar company, or the promotion, or the stock, or becoming a millionaire. And when I went into the startup world, again, I was just naive. You know, I went and I started working part-time, and I was in Boston, and I said, I want to be in a startup, and I just wanted to be in a startup. And the only thing that I needed was, I have 3 kids. I was like, can you please have money for a year? Like, can you not shut down in 3 months, right? That was my perspective. And I wasn't like, I was not aiming, optimizing for amounts of shares. I wasn't optimizing salary is what I needed to live, right? And so don't overcomplicate things for this, like, perfect, trying to be better at guessing than VCs or than other entrepreneurs that have more experience, which is the right company, which is the best company, right? And so what I did is, I worked for David, and the main thing that you want to do is that it's not about titles necessarily, but you want to learn and you want to grow. You want to show that you're being given more opportunities, that you've learned, and that you've been entrusted with more responsibilities in every place that you go, right? And another thing is that, do try to have as long stints as you can in companies, right? Because if you're like a 1 year everywhere, it's not good, right? It's like, I'm looking at people, and it's going to hurt you. People don't think that that's going to hurt you, but I'm interviewing for a CRO position, and I'm interviewing top candidates in the world, right? And I have some candidates that are like, they went to this company for 1 year. They went to this company and they sold. They were a CEO of this. You can see this crazy pattern in their resume that you're like, And now what I have is, I've been getting coached on, like, what is the perfect executive to hire for different stages. And when I look at my resume, right, I can see a progression that makes sense, right? And it's like, I worked for 10 years at a company. So that shows people that I have stability, that I'm not ego driven, okay. Then I went and took a risk. Then I ran a small company. Then I ran a bigger company that had an outcome. Then so you want to show a path that has consistent 2-3 years, everywhere, and then you're getting better. You're making good decisions. You're not going to worse companies. So, but you don't have to have the perfect one from the get-go, from the first day.
When did you know it was the right time to transition between companies? Like, why was 10 years the right mark in IBM, and when was the right time to transition amongst all the other companies you were at?
That's a really good point. I'm going to tell you what happened. I have different eras in IBM. I was working for a really amazing team. I worked for the team that put IBM on the internet, put IBM.com, did the largest traffic websites in the world. We brought instant messaging. My first job at IBM, I was building bots in 1999 on instant messaging. It's like IRC bots and, instant messaging. This was like the same company that built AIM, right? And so it's just interesting enough. So it was a great time. And I have eras at IBM where I was doing early learning how to be an engineer. Then I went to Harvard for a master's in computer science. So I got the chance that company paid for my education. Then I had a chance where I started representing IBM in World Wide Web Standards, W3C. And I was working with Tim Berners-Lee and Semantic Web at the MIT CSAIL lab, right? And so I was growing. And it's when, after those things happened and I stopped growing and learning, that I realized I needed to go somewhere else. Like, I outgrew IBM, and there was not enough ability for me to. The more I learned how to execute and I learned to be a visionary by working with visionaries. I learned how to ship product. I learned to work open source, and I learned to work at a larger scale by learning how people design HTML, HTTP, right? And saying, that's how you think when you build something, right? So I was learning about a lot of things, right? Product development, open source, legal, patents, usage, adoption, that are all serving me well now, that people didn't realize were useful, right? So when I stopped learning, I said, it's time. And my personality is I want to make an impact. I want to make decisions. I want to take risks. It really wasn't about the rewards. It's like, I just want to be happy, and I took a chance, right?
What do you think were some of the key skills that you developed and experiences that you had at IBM at your first startup that set you up for success later? And what are skills and experiences that you think we should be trying to have after business school?
So I already answered that. An important thing I learned about doing panels, right, is that you have to not just have a list of questions, but always be thinking, listening, and
Yeah.
asking based
So
on
you
that.
talked about being a visionary, shipping products on larger scale, but just like building on that, like which do you think were the most important? Because that's a very long laundry list. All of them?
Yeah, yeah. Those. I mean, like I said, I learned about visionaries. Like I was working with people. There are features in the Chrome browser that came 10 years later that we had built at IBM. Like I was working with people. I just don't know how do you identify that. But I work with excellent technical visionaries and scientists that did amazing things before their time, right? And so it's like I built this. I don't know if you guys know on technology, but in the browser, there's this thing called web workers. That is the thread that you can spin in JavaScript. I built that in Internet Explorer 4.01, right? And so like there's a lot of stuff that we did. I was doing Hadoop before most people were doing big data, right? When I left, and that was one of the key things that I used that looked great. And so I was working on NoSQL before most people were working on NoSQL. And so it was shipping non-enterprise software. I was building a lot of pilots at IBM that I would build myself, launch, and have people use. And I didn't have to go through the entire product development machinery of IBM. That taught me that scrappiness that I use in the startups to build products, right? So it's a little bit of a personality, who you are. And those are things that I want us as Latinx, right, is to harness and understand how we are, stereotypically. Like, let's say that we may be more gung-ho, impatient, cowboy, or whatever, right? Whatever makes us, that I know that is familiar to a lot of us, is are things that you should use to your advantage, right? In helping you, guide you where you should be, what companies you should be, who you should be working with, and what are you learning, right?
I think that's a good segue to talking a little bit about your transition to entrepreneurship. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition beyond the first stage, and also go a little bit deeper in what you just talked about? What are aspects of your culture and background that you think help, or strengths that you're able to leverage?
Something that is fresh, right, with COVID right now is that if you look at, I grew up in Nicaragua, and I grew up under communist Nicaragua. I had a card that said there was 5 residents in my household: my mother, my stepdad, and my 2 brothers. And so I would grab that card and I would go down the street, and they would say, you get a pound of rice, you get a pound of beans, you get this plasticky liter of milk, and like maybe half a pound of sugar. And I would grab that in a basket that is like a wicker basket that was threaded. I remember that. I remember the handles that it broke. I have a photographic memory. So I brought that, and I would bring that food to the house. And then people would be like in the line, why are you doing this? Your parents are not doing? My mother is working, right? And so they sent me, and we didn't have a maid or somebody, right? Because we were lower middle class. She's a professional, though. She's a doctor and veterinarian. And so like, I grabbed that, and now we're COVID, working from home, and everybody's panicking, and everybody's like, struggling. And I want to separate. There are people that have no jobs, can't pay their bills. They might lose their homes. That is stressful. But there are people that have a job, or they can pay for their stuff, and they're complaining because they can't go hang out. They can go party, right? And so try not to be too judgmental, but or people at work. I didn't have stuff to eat. We can go to Whole Foods and buy food. And so it's like this kinds of times, companies are breaking, falling apart because they do not know how to react, right? And they do not know. So that immigrant, that coming from the bottom, that scrappiness, that anti-entitlement view of the world is very important. And we're now having a tough time. And this is where great companies are built. This is where great people, entrepreneurs are built. And so that all that upbringing that I've had allows me to see things from a different perspective than another founder that is like, had never experienced that or had only good times before, right? And so in the same way, it's like, I basically came here and I used to clean offices. I used to clean a dentist's office, pick up the trash, vacuum the rugs. And then, so to me, everything is icing. To just not having a home in my country and then here have a home, right? And then first have an apartment, then be able that we could pay for. We lived in a borrowed home for 15 years in Nicaragua. To have an apartment that we paid for, to have a condo, to have a house, everything is icing. So I don't complain about anything that I have. Everything is incredible. And so that gives me this mentality that there's no plan B for me. There is no alternative that I'm considering. Is my house bigger than this other house? Is this person has a house in Nantucket and I don't? I don't care. I'm here to build a great company. And is that my goal? Not exactly what I have or what credential I say I put on my resume.
So I'm driving specifically now, we segue to crisis and managing in times of crisis. What do you think have been some of the most successful things you've done in these last couple of weeks at Drift, and what do you think is setting Drift up for success?
I think that one of the things that David did early on was that we're big fans of Horowitz, and the book, what is it? What's the book?
Hard things about hard things or something like that.
Hard things about hard things. Yeah. And so when it talks about peacetime, wartime CEO, and so that's another thing, right? Are you a peacetime CEO in general? What's your personality? Are you a wartime CEO? And so David and I, we joke because it felt at Drift that we were in peacetime CEO times last year because we had grown. We were wartime before that. I would talk to the team and the company at scale, and I would say, if you read the book Built from Scratch, which is about Home Depot, for example, and Lowe's, there's parts where they're talking about the competition between Home Depot and Lowe's was like, they would have company meetings in the parking lots of Lowe's. It's like, you got to read that book. It's amazing, right? Arthur Blank, right? And I think I forget the name of the other guy. It's like Bernie or something. And it's like, and they're like, they say, the competition is here to take away your children's education, right? You got to think about it. Like, this is a war, right? Competitor this is not friendly. This is not competition. There's nothing. They want nothing but your business to die. And it's the future of all of our employees. It's at stake, right? And so when I spoken in front of the company in the early days of Drift, I'd be like, competition, they want to take our children. And so there's posters around the office where people make fun of me. And this is that they're coming after your children. But it's that serious, right? And then last year we were a little bit too peacetime, right? And David and I talked about it. And we're like, that's not us. I'm not a peacetime person, right? I'm a wartime, right? So this thing is the first thing was really change the mentality and tell everybody this is wartime, right? And we have to think in that way. We have to focus. We have to understand the sacrifice is coming, and there will be casualties, right? This is not a time of like, let's all that you mask it, and then you're being hypocrite of saying like, no, we love everybody, but nothing's going to happen, and then things have to happen. And so we, from day one, we set the tone and said, hold fast. These are our principles, but anything can happen. We do not know. Nobody knows. This is something unprecedented, never seen before in the history of the world. And so nobody can promise anything of what's going to happen. And so the first one is mentally switching gears and then start making decisions fast, which is another principle at Drift, right? Which is seek feedback, not consensus. And also, be biased for action. And so we're like, immediately, we were like, we reviewed our hiring and didn't freeze it, but prioritize who we needed. And so we are hiring people, but we're not going to second, make cash extension decisions, right? Like, what is our runway? And we extended our runway under certain models to 7 or 8 quarters, right? Which is what people were advised. Try to go for 24 months of ability to survive. And the other one is that we immediately assess what we need to be doing. We have the theme we kicked off is simplify, focus, and repeat. Let's find out what's working and then double down on that. and really understanding our product and really what its position in the market. You want to build products that people need. There are painkillers, they're not vitamins. And so what we are learning is that, and this is something that I've been waiting for this day, because the market cannot just go up, is like, will people buy your product in when the economic situation is not just climbing up, when money's just not laying around? And so we are finding that it's not Zoom levels, right? But if you notice the market, there are days that the market is completely down and Zoom, everything is down by 20 points and Zoom is up by 0.03%. And so that says a lot, right? That is, it's not like it's going 20% up, but it's like it goes up, it goes the opposite relationship. And so we have many businesses that are in the economy today that are not selling at all, yet Drift is selling. We are continuing selling, and we're hitting really good goals despite the situation. And so that's a great sign. And we just need to figure out who should we be talking. There are people that are pushing deals to the following quarter, but you can see the pent-up demand and the desire of people who want to buy more of Drift in these times, because it's critical to revenue, right? And to buyer experience. And so that's something that we're focusing right now and validating, because that could mean a huge difference in spike in growth for Drift in 6-9 months.
Following up on that question, a lot of my classmates are thinking of setting up businesses in current times. What advice do you give to them in terms of doing what you just talked about, identifying what is a painkiller that they can provide that people will buy throughout times of crisis?
Right, you want to understand, there's a lot to think, right? It's really comes down to like product development, right? And it's really understanding, for example, not everybody, but a lot of people are thinking, right, like, how will the world change after this, right? The world will change. And so the more you can anticipate and nail that and go in that direction, that will be good. Second, the way you validate it is that from day one of Drift, we always ask that question. When we started Drift, there was 2 of us at our rock climbing gym, David and I, and we were buying software, right? We were like, what do we need? And he was like, Gmail. We need Gmail. We claimed, and we bought Slack, right? So we had Gmail, we had Slack. And then you start buying Gusto, HR, right? And then you go hire an accountant, And so you start looking at that as it's like a Maslow hierarchy, right? And you're like, who you start a business, what do you do? And so if you watch that, you see companies, and you decide whether it's you watch a company from its infancy, or you're going into a company that is an enterprise customer that has a scale problem that no one is solving, right? And so you go straight into the enterprise. But overall, pain for us has worked really well, because it's like the ability to talk to customers and to sell happens when you're small and happens when you're large. And so we've been transitioning and moving up the market, right, to go towards the enterprise, right? Because we've seen that they get more value out of Drift, and they're more engaged and they churn less, and and they adopt it. When they adopt it really well, right? And so it's just, in times, what are the top priorities in any business, and what place do you hold in that, is the way that I think about from day one of Drift, right?
So transitioning a little bit, but staying on the topic of uncertainty, what advice do you have to us as we try and approach our job search in this time, both internship and full-time?
What's happening right now? People, is it there are no jobs at all, or is it like the options are less? Give me a little bit. I don't know what you guys are going through. It's hard for me to be like, this is what you think.
I would love other people to chime in, but in terms of the things I'm seeing is I have friends who had internship offers who have been rescinded. A lot of companies are stopping their formal internship processes, and the amount of hiring has just decreased in general. If anyone else wants to chime in, feel free to do so. Yeah, I think you're good then, Elias.
I think that I think it's really, it depends on the situation, right? I mean, if it's an internship, are we talking just for the summer, right? I would pivot real quick and decide what's best, right? Is it best to do nothing, or is it best to work for free, for example? You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, yeah, I just went down to my mom's house in Florida and just hung out in South Beach, right, for the summer. Or it's to say, I either work for free for some company and find a way to do that I gain experience and I built a network and I prep myself to get a job after. Or do you say, I go get involved with a startup, right, and go solve something. It's about gaining experience and learning, to me, right? And I would say that there's a whole bunch of lists that are going up right now that talk about who's hiring, who's not hiring, and so I just find my way to be busy, to stay busy, and to keep on learning. And if you want to do, if it's a full-time thing, try starting something, right, and explore that experience and see how that goes, because there are places. It's a forcing function to learn how to make money and how to build product, right, and how to fundraise. But there's nothing wrong with go bang your head against like contacting a VC and pitching them something. It's like, who cares, right? Who cares if they say no? Who cares if they left? You come back again. They know you. They're always desperate for leads and people that they know and they have more familiarity with.
So
that's important. Yeah. Go ahead.
Like, continuing with this and the idea of like potentially starting startups. The last topic that I think a lot of people wanted to cover is around how being a diverse founder impacted or didn't impact your fundraising process and the process of starting a startup, and how much David helped you through this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I could complain more about being Latin in the fundraising aspect of it, but I can't, to be true. To be honest, I think I've been under David's shadow in a good way, right? And so when I went to join him to do Lookery, he already had fundraised, right, for Lookery. When we started Performable, he literally just said to me, I'll be right back. And he went to a meeting with CRV and came back with a $3 million check, right? It's like, and so that was the Series A for Performable. That's it. Just went to one meeting, and because he already did compete and he already had done bold.com, and so he knew the firm, and so it was great. Then we sold to HubSpot, right? And then Brian and Dharmesh did all the fundraising there. So I didn't do any of that. My experience fundraising has been mostly at Drift, right? Where I've been involved in all three rounds and every discussion on the VC side of it. And so it's been a little bit different because we raised from General Catalyst, we raised from CRV, and we raised from Sequoia. These are companies that know us already because all of those were at HubSpot, right? And so we're known quantity and they're respected, and they knew better than anybody else what we had done at HubSpot. And so we found their support. Izar, from our first investor at Drift, just did a lunch and learn on Wednesday at the office. And he told them the stories like, we went to lunch. He invited us to lunch, and he just said, here's a check for $10 million to David and Elias' company. And he just believes in teams, right? So the only thing I can say there is build relationships, right? But focus about the results, right? Not about the relationship. I will say though, the more I fundraise and I speak, it's like, there is a network, right? There is who went to school together, who knows each other, who played polo together, who that kind of stuff that I don't have and I don't exercise, and I can't. I have only been able to have my conversations. People only come and talk to me because they want a piece of my business that we created, and it's valuable and it's gonna make them money. And so that's at the end of the day, that's the only way that we're going to be able to overcome the challenge. And then, you know, there are people that get money in VCs because of the relationship, because of the color of their skin. I can guarantee you that. But, you know, we're not going to be able to overcome that. So we got to be building. And what I've done, I think, is something you guys should follow, is like align yourself with successful Latinos. There's a called Top Latin VCs or something. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but I don't know if anyone else does.
There's a page. Hold on, let me see. I just got invited to this thing, to this WhatsApp channel, Top Latinx Tech Leaders, right? And so I'm gonna put it in the chat here. And so we're trying to raise awareness, right? Of the people, right? That sometimes we feel like there's none, right? But we are there cranking and trying to claw our way in and bring success to this. And so, like, I would say, go looking for companies like that, like I did with David, and then align, and then go get that success, get the stuff. The success of companies, you guys can, it gets shared. It's not like I have like, this is Drift success, I keep it by myself. Everybody in the company can use it in any way they want to their advantage, right? And we want you, that's why you come here, to share in that value. And so by aligning yourself with other people in there, you can start building the relationships, and you need success. And success will bring more success. And the more of us do it, the more we'll be able to tap and bring other people, so we can eventually create a strong network, right? That we can fund each other, that we can prove to people, break the stereotype, and say, you know what, they can be as successful as anybody else, right? Because no one has the secret to entrepreneurship and to building great companies. We're learning that day by day.
So it seems like the advice is find a good mentor, work hard, deliver results, and then the rest will follow.
It sounds simple, right?
Sounds
Work
simple.
hard. Yeah, sounds simple. Yeah. Not easy. Which is the pitch I made to Terrence, right? I was like, Terrence is like more like you guys, like HBS, and he's like banking, New York City, big money, and I'm like, Terrence, I don't know, what do you? It's like, come over here, right? I want to back you up, I want to support, I want to teach you exactly how we make the sausage, right? And for you to learn day in, day out, and then, like, just like I learned with David, I'm a completely different leader by watching him and seeing him learn and the habits. I worked with David almost 12 years. It's like, this stuff does not come in a 6-month internship. This does not come in a 1 year working at a company. It's like, it takes time, and I'm 44 this year, right? So it's like, I've been working 24 years professionally, right? And so yeah, if you want to claim you're successful, I see a lot of young people like, I'm 24, I'm top of the world. I'm like, let me watch your Zoom. You're working out of a closet, right? And it's like, and you haven't sold anything, you have no money in the bank, and you haven't whatever, but you're a top leader. Okay, I like to really earn what I do and boast less about it, right? So just let it speak for itself.
The last question before I open up to the audience is, can you speak a little bit more about your relationship with David? What do you think has made him a really strong mentor, and what are the most important things you've learned from him?
Well, you want to align people that have good morals, right? In the sense, like, and that there's a wide spectrum, right? But I find David to be, honest, right? In his business dealings, right? He's consistent, loyal, right? It's like he rewards the right behaviors, in meaning, like, he doesn't like everybody, but it's like, if you work really, if you deliver results and stuff, like, he appreciates that, right? And so he just has a high bar of excellence in the people that he wants to work, and so I've learned from him to be that way too. And so there's been a contract, right? One is our diversity has helped us stick together, right? Because we're far and few. We come from from similar beginnings, and so therefore we don't have, we think along the same lines, right? Where we're not complaining. He doesn't complain about having some luxury or not having a luxury, and neither do I. So that allows us to build a company with the same principles. We are opposite in personality. He is an introvert and I'm an extrovert. I want decisions made quickly. He wants to think about them. So there creates a tension between us, right? He's more demanding. I can be more complacent. And so there's a tension in what we should be doing, how fast he's even more, if I'm a wartime CEO, he's even more wartime CEO. He's like global, like, world war, Guerra del Mundo level CEO. So like, he's way more paranoid, right? And so that only the paranoid will survive. And he reads and teaches a lot, has humility to be like, I don't know this, and I learned this, right? And so it's been good. Like, I can trust him. He trusts me. We are humble in the way that we support each other. We are honest and upfront in our business dealings on how we make agreements. We disagree and commit. We keep going, right? And we don't go revisit the past, right? It's like we'll joke. I said to him yesterday, like, I'm doing all this work, and I can't believe this. Next time, there's no next time. So we'll joke about equity and things like that as a joke, but it's never really emotional, right? It's never going to be there creating a cancer in my mind. So we're very careful. It's like a marriage that you want a marriage to endure, where you're like, you don't want to be harboring things. We're here to build something together, and we're better together than separate, right? And we have to keep the pride in the ego in check. And it's like, he's the CEO. I'm the number two. When we first moved into 222 Berkeley in Boston, the woman the security guard, she goes, when I walked in the first day that we moved into the office, she sees me and she opens the elevator, the turnstile, and she goes, "Hi, you would drift?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Are you number two?" She says that to me. And I was just dying, right? And I'm like, I go, "That's the worst thing you can tell the number two, that he's number two." And so she goes, "I saw a picture, and it just gave me the sense, maybe because I'm shorter, I don't know. But ego brings you down. Every time, sometimes when there's tension in a relationship, sometimes I can pinpoint it. It's my ego affected me. And so the way that I solve it is by, we're a team, we're working together, we're a partnership. We're going to accomplish more together than separate. And so you want something that lasts, and something that you have respect, you have trust, you're able to apologize, you're able to communicate it, and so it's a lot of fun, and I'm thankful because he's taught me a lot, and I can keep learning, and more and more I seek to gain his respect, in that he's seen me grow the most. Like, he's kind of been like the same type of individual all along, because he had 10 years before me of startups that I didn't have. But now he's seen me grow, and he's like, once in a while I get like a pat on the back, and like, "Yeah, you did better. You're different than you were. You were crazier when I first met you, and way more, unpredictable and impatient, and not as inexperienced, right? As less than you are now." So it's been good. I like it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. Can people use the raise hands feature, and then I'll call on people? Juan Carlos.
Elias, first of all, thank you for your time. It's great to meet Latino entrepreneurs, and I think we're all really proud of what you're doing. You mentioned your family, that when you decided to transition into becoming an entrepreneur, that you had 3 kids. My question for you is, how has your family influenced your professional career path?
I think it's been really good, because they're really young from when we had them, and having a family, it's learning how to deal in the business world, right? it's a human endeavor, right? It's really about it's about building relationships and having conversations with people. And so it's about growing up. And so there's a big difference me talking to, I can go and talk to when I'm recruiting, I'm talking to people when I'm selling, when I'm fundraising, when I'm supporting a customer. And so the more you grow as an individual and well-rounded you become, the more you're able to use and influence the learnings in both directions, right? There are cases that I learned, my wife is giving me looks. It's good, bad look. And so there's the thing is like, for example, I remember my kids in first grade and a teacher comes and says, this is a rubric of how you write the letter C. And so the teacher said to me, it's like, I'm teaching the kids the rubric of what makes a good letter C and how they can supervise each other to use the rubric to review somebody else's work and give feedback. And I remember how much it hit me that day. And I said, that's what we need. I need a rubric for engineering at HubSpot, and I need to go define that, and so people can rate each other instead of me rating them. You know, I'm just basic stuff that I didn't know. When I was in school, if they were using that method, I didn't pay attention to it, right? And so there's a lot about having teenage children. There's a lot about having toddlers. It's about, it teaches you about, you're going to be at work and you have things at home, and then you have to come back and you have to bathe the kids and put them to bed, and then you continue working, right? That you might not understand with before you have a family, right? And so, or, it gives me more empathy when I'm hiring individuals that have family, when I'm hiring women that are pregnant. I have women come to me and say during an interview, like, hey, it's like, I'm pregnant, and is that a problem for you? And I'm like, no, that's like, I have 3 children, right? That's not a problem. It's like, just let's plan ahead. And like, if I want you here for 10 years in this company. It's not there. Why would I not want that, right? And so it gives me a whole different depth to understand people that are in college, people that are in relationships, people that are going to go build a partnership, and then hopefully start a family. And then the evolution of people at work. I mean, at Drift, we're growing into a company 5 years old, and we just see how many babies we have and families and stuff. I saw that same thing happen at HubSpot in the growth, right? So all those things, what I do here affects how I treat people at the office, how I'm at the office. It's teaching me to be over here, find balance. I have been a very different individual through every different company. There were days in Lookery and Performo where I would be here all day on Saturday coding, and the family was like, let's do something. And I was like, I'm going to finish this soon. And then it would be 4 p.m. and the Saturday went, and I didn't do anything, right? And so I can help other people advise, and sometimes you have to do that, and sometimes you say no. And now I do some calls here and there, but I try not to. I'm focusing right now on like the quality time that we have with our teenager kids before they go to college. So all that stuff, to me, you got to be a learner, right? You got to be thinking about how that helps. You got to learn how to learn and how to realize what you're learning, and then how to see the applications of it. That's key. And then the whole thing will just snowball.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Jose.
Hey, gracias, Elias. Thank you so much for your insights. I think my question is, you posted a link about top Latinx leaders, and I think at least I didn't know about it, and perhaps many on the call didn't know about it. And that made me think that there's definitely something kind of fragmented in the market. I mean, us here in this kind of big institution could even be having a more active role, like trying to bring together more of our Latino community. So what are things that were in our shoes that we should be thinking about to really bring our community even closer together? Obviously in times like this one, during the COVID times, but even more generally speaking, for us to leverage each other even more to continue to achieve success like you have with David.
Well, like I said, is one, I'm in this call here. You ask Terrence, my calendar is like war mode, right? It's like I'm like calls all day, all night, and so I want to support you guys. I want Drift to be the new face of corporate America, right? And I want to use what makes us different is what makes us better, right? And so I want to use this, and I'm here, like, I want to hire all of you, right? Or I want to hire the best of you, right? Because I want people saying, oh, there's no Latinos, yeah, there's no African Americans, there's no blacks that are qualified for this job, right? There's not enough engineers. And that is not true, right? It's like we hire a smaller percentage of minorities than we do of Asian and Indian in engineering, for example. Those we can hire 80% of the graduates. But Latinx and blacks, we hire like 20, 30% of them. It's a problem there, right? And so people say that we were invisible to them. And so so I'm going and saying, and taking effort to go meet and talk and do this stuff and trying to balance that with my job. You have no idea my job, I have to do work, but is to reach out and find them because we're there. Just like I was, there's even more. And so it's like, want to bring them, and then I have to break through the walls at Drift to even make sure that we can hire them. Andres, are we still on? We're still on, right? You're in for May?
Yep.
And so we're in for May, and it's like Andres came, and then they're like, oh, we don't have jobs in this, and Andres was like, I want to get paid $200,000 in this, and I said to Andres came, and I'm like, look, I'm gonna make sure you come. He came after me when I talked to one of the classes. I said, what happened? I talked, nothing else. There's no budget. There's no hiring. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, what's going on here? I set the stage. I told Andres, don't make it too complicated on me. You know what I mean? It's like, want to give you a shot. You want to put your money where your mouth is. And we made that happen, right? And so now I need him to prove to everybody how good he is and how humble and how he's going to work hard and why there's a merit to us. What's different about us and what is our hunger, our drive, our principles, our values, right? So people are like, so we change the reputation that we might have, the stereotype, the bias. I hire Angela, I hire Terrence, right? There's all these people I'm trying to do. So what I want is, I want to do that. Let's approach all those top Latinx leaders. Let's do it. Reach out. Let's get people in. Let's use this to our advantage and create companies that look entirely different than what we're used to seeing today, right? So like networks, mobilize, meet, do this, whatever, but don't just mix in one circle. We gotta blend, we gotta connect circles, right? We have small little circles. Okay, this is, HBS, and this is like Princeton, and there's this USF in Florida, and there's this stuff. I opened an office in Tampa for that reason. But then there's top Latinx leaders, and there's different companies, and there's this like investors, and then so let's connect them, because I want to show you all the levels that I've seen, and there's levels above me. You see all these people like from the Valley, Sequoia, and I want to tell you everything, and then we gotta, if you don't see it, if you don't have a role model, you don't know what's out there and how to get there. But we gotta start from the bottom.
Gracias.
Luis.
Hey, thank you. Elias, your last response literally brought like tears into my eyes.
Which one?
What you were just talking about just now, your last response.
Just stop it. Don't bring tears in my eyes.
You started it, you did it. Yeah, thank you for coming. I really appreciated hearing your story. It resonated a lot, especially the idea of like when you're an immigrant and you're ambitious, like the world is so simple. It took me back to like when I was applying to college, and I literally like opened the application and I was like, all right, here's some majors. It's like accounting, like I just started going down the A's. I was like, architecture, that sounds good. Click, and like didn't even make it down the list.
Yeah.
So ridiculous, like the approach. But yeah, the question that I have is, in this context of Corona and the crisis, I'm curious, what was your experience as a business leader during the recession in 2008, 2009? Maybe like what were some of the lessons that you learned there? And then I'm curious about in this new context, like what are some of the similarities or differences that you are forming ideas around how the world might be different moving forward?
Okay, I got a few more minutes. Yeah, the big thing was what I learned there, things that I learned from that one. I left IBM 2 weeks later, 2008 recession hits. I make $110,000 salary after 10 years at IBM. I have 3 kids at home, all under the age of 4. My wife works, she doesn't have a job. She's at the home all the time with the kids. I have a home in Lowell, Massachusetts, 1,500 square feet, $290,000. I have 3 months of cash in the bank, and I have about $100K in my 401k. That the year before I had put in real estate index funds. I had nothing, right? And I work for a 10-person startup that lays off half of the team. And that context, are you guys in better situation than that one? Or you're in worse situation than that one right now? Raise your hand if you're better than that one, or raise your hand if you're worse. Worse, that's the worst? Okay, good. And then the better? Right? And so that's the kind of like so to give you a context. So at that time, what did I learn? All things pass. Nothing is the end of the world, right? If my 401k dropped and I had no savings, don't worry about it, right? You don't worry when something like that happens. You don't stress and say that the world ended. You worry about the world ending the day the world ended. Don't worry about it before that, right? I will tell you, in 2 years, the market will start moving back in the direction, right? And if you don't do anything crazy, like go sell all your stuff and go, just stay put. It is what it is. Patience. This thing usually will fix itself. The other is that as long as we have health, as long as we have a roof, if not, we go find another roof. We can, there are ways to solve the problems. Again, not panicking. We have the potential for great lives, great careers. And so like, no need to. There are people that are in a worse situation that they can't dig themselves out. We're in a position that we can dig ourselves out of it. I think I'm generalizing, right? Second, I learned that I enjoy these times better because you don't have as much distraction from the competition. I'm just sorry to be saying this way, be crass, right? It's like when we were building Performable, we had $3 million in funding. Nobody could get fundraising, right? So I didn't have like a million companies like biting at my ankles and saying like, oh yeah, we can do it, we can get money. So it definitely simplifies the market, and it only lets the best ones rise up, in that environment. And so it's a true test of leadership and capabilities and endurance and persistence, right? And so I like that because sometimes you're working so hard and you're doing stuff, and people can't tell the difference between a 5-person chat company and Drift, right? People are like, oh, it looks like they're better than Drift. People go present themselves to VCs. We're the Drift killer, 5-person company, 5 customers. Like, stop wasting my time, right? It's like I got to focus on Salesforce. Got to focus on the big fish. And so I learned that the closer you are to that time, the better prepared you are for a downturn, the more advantages you're going to have to come out and sprint back with a force. And so you have to be thinking right now, what can you do to prepare during this time to be ready and not be caught off guard? It's like I saw some Instagram meme or something that says, if you're not everything you could be, why are you chilling so much, right? It's like don't be chilling, right? It's like, unless you're like made, right? Then there's no time to be wasting. You got to be preparing, learning, networking, building, and learning skills, doing work. And so that's kind of like the way I see it. So those are the things I'm carrying over to this one. It's like, this is the time where we can create a new chapter for Drift. We have a vision of building an enduring company, and we've been doing really well. But now coming back out of this is the opportunity to say to people, like, we endured that and we doubled and we became stronger. And so we are preparing ourselves, we're preparing our product. I'm pushing the bar in every way to the team and say, we're not going to sit still here and just worry about things. We're going to get better.
Hey, yes, thank you for your time. I don't know if you have more time, but we have 2 more questions.
One more, quick.
Miguel.
Thank you very much, Elias. I'll go straight to the point. It seems to me that when you try to raise money from VCs, they're all looking for this unicorn startup to fund so they can like double their fund quickly, right? But for a founder, it would be just as profitable to exit at 100 million, for example, make a $100 million company, sell it, then go to a unicorn in 10 years, right? What are your thoughts on those and how to approach funding if you're just looking for, like, maybe you don't want a unicorn, maybe you want, as a first founder, you want something smaller and quicker, right?
Yeah. So there's different level. I don't even know all the different levels, but there's different levels of VCs, right, that have different requirements. There's like seed and pre-seed investors that they don't care too much, right? They're just spraying and praying. Right? They're like, okay, here's 100,000, here's 250, here's $1 million. And they just go there because one of them out of 100 investments is going to give you the 10x return that they need, right? And so there's that. And then there is the companies like the Sequoias and the this that they, when you start going into the B's and the C's, that you need to do that. Overall, venture capital, it's an interesting mathematical game of how they work. I need this 10x in this one. In growth, I need a 3x. If it's not 3x, no way. And so, like, the more you understand that, and whether you work for them or not, the more you understand who you need to be talking to, and you have to pitch for that. You have to decide, if you want to build a bootstrap business where you sell it for $100 million and you get $96 million out of that, fantastic, great home run, right? It's, to me, I respect it as much, if not more, than a $1 billion company, right, that went public. It doesn't matter. It's just, we're being entrepreneurs and we're building businesses. But if you're talking to VCs, you have to have 100 million in revenue, $1 billion company, plan, vision, market size. Because if not, they're not going to give you $10 million, $20 million in funding. So you have to do that. And then the better the partnership, everybody understands that some companies are going to have to sell. And I sold Performable, and it was really, you know, the VCs, Ezar, said, don't sell out. It's like, you know, we can go far. Here's the Series B, blah, blah, blah. We had a $7 million term sheet and stuff like that. And I sold to HubSpot, right? You know what? You know where I lived, right? I lived low and so, like, and now, you know, I can see Boston. I have a kitchen like I never had before, and blah, blah, blah. And the family needed it, right? So it's like, it's okay, right? We're all humans and we have some needs. And so that's why, like, investors on Series B's and Series C's will give some money to the founders and do a secondary, so you can, you know, cut the edge off and you're not like selling the company with a great prospect. And so it takes steps, you know what I mean? It's like, there's all kinds of risks. There's nothing wrong with taking some of the stress and the anxiety off the table, right? And so you can do that without getting too crazy. So yeah, it's like, you need billion-dollar visions. You need you gotta practice finding and explaining and telling the story of a large vision. And then long-term big market. And then you go along the way and then you see what happens. But, you know, it's okay. There shouldn't be any pride. If you had to sell a company for n number of millions of dollars, do it. If you could go all the way, find the VCs that will partner. And then Ezar, who supported us, wasn't agreeing with us, but supported us to sell to HubSpot, was the same one that put $10 million into direct Series A. And now he's going to be rewarded for that loyalty and for that. So it's about true relationships and all that stuff. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Thank you. Yeah, super clear. Thanks so much.